How do you come to peace with your spouse after an argument? Growing up in the States, in a very talkative family, I learned that you had to talk after an argument. But sometimes people aren't ready. Sometimes they don't have the Yoyu yet. And by Yoyu, I mean they don't have the mental, or in this case, maybe emotional wherewithal to talk yet. So, what is Yoyu? Yoyu is a Japanese word used in daily conversation to indicate your ability or wherewithal to handle something. And depending on the context, having yoyu could mean, for example, you have enough money to buy something, you can afford it. Or you have enough time, energy, bandwidth, experience, patience, space to do it. You have the wherewithal to handle whatever is coming up in your life right now. When you don't have yoyu, it means you don't have enough money, time, energy, bandwidth, experience, patience, space to do what you want to or maybe have to do. You don't have the wherewithal. You don't have the oomph. Hi, I'm Marci Kobayashi, and if you're new here, Finding Yoyu is my memoir about the year I juggled end-of-life care for my mother-in-law, tried to understand and navigate Alzheimer's for my father-in-law after he came to live with us, and helped my husband through a chemo-free recovery from stage 3 colon cancer. Pretty much all of this happened in 1 year. And did I mention that we live in Japan and my in-laws do not speak English? So I wrote the first draft of the memoir back in 2018 and then shelved it. And one of my friends encouraged me to get back at it by sharing a section of the book each week here with all of you. So we are at the point in the book, if you've been following along, where I've just had a huge argument with my spouse, Akira, and I sent him a very, very long, drawn-out email and then deleted it before he could read it because I realized he didn't have the yoyu or the emotional or spiritual, mental wherewithal to deal with what I had written at that time. So I'm going to pick up with the story from there and sit back, listen, and enjoy. After sending the quick email to update my sister Michelle, I took a deep breath and headed for the kitchen to start dinner. I smiled, remembering Michelle's homework from the morning. Keep making food because you need to eat. I guess I wouldn't mind sharing with Akira and Oto-san too. Cooking to feed me first and then sharing some of that food with others felt a lot different than the reverse. I poured walnuts into a frying pan to dry roast. I would add those to mashed kabocha pumpkin, one of my favorite side dishes. I poured a handful of dried wakame into a bowl and added water while keeping one eye on the walnuts. Then I sliced cucumbers and fresh ginger. The reconstituted wakame, cucumber, and ginger would make a nice side salad flavored with vinegar, lemon, and a touch of maple syrup for sweetness. A few months ago, I would have added a dollop of soy sauce. Learning to cook without soy sauce had been a challenge, but our taste buds were getting used to the no-added sodium diet that Akira's doctor recommended. I opened the refrigerator to get the tofu. We would have fried tofu tonight, too. As I moved around the kitchen, I thought about my email to Akira. After putting all my feelings down in writing, none of my talking points seemed as urgently important anymore. It felt as if all the steam built up in my pressure cooker self had finally dissipated and I could safely remove the lid and be with others. An hour later, when Akira walked in the door, I was grateful I had deleted the email from his account before he could see it. Before changing clothes, he came into the kitchen and silently handed me a paper bag that was almost too hot to touch. He had stopped by the store on the way home and picked up fresh roasted sweet potatoes. The sweet caramel-like aroma filled the room. Roasted sweet potatoes, or yaki-imo as they are called in Japanese, were a family favorite. The sweet potatoes were Akira's silent way of saying, "We're okay, and we'll be okay." He wasn't trying to apologize or make up for our argument. The potatoes were not like the flowers or gifts that I saw husbands give their spouses on TV. The sweet potatoes were normal. Arguments were normal too. I remembered back to one of our first big arguments shortly after we started living together. We weren't married yet, but firmly committed. After our argument and before making up, I remember worrying that I had made a big mistake and feeling afraid that we couldn't survive in a relationship together. Filled with dread, I started mapping out exit scenarios in my mind. When we finally talked, Akira was stunned that I had allowed myself to think of separating. Though he had been angry and frustrated, he hadn't entertained the idea that our relationship was over. I, on the other hand, had been quick to assume something was fatally wrong with us. I don't remember what we argued about that day. Still, I remember that argument well because our talk afterward helped me settle into the possibility of a long-term and, dare I say, forever partnership. My parents had divorced when I was 10. Growing up, I joked with my sister repeatedly that there was no point in getting married because I believed marriages meant eventually getting divorced. So, in the beginning of our relationship, the fact that Akira was also divorced only supported my belief. Then, after that first, or maybe it was the second or third, big argument, when I realized that Akira was not contemplating the end of our relationship, I felt something shift, like the earth settling after a big earthquake, a little shaky still, but firming up with every day, week, and month. I would never again have to fill my head with exit scenarios. I remember deciding that if Akira wasn't thinking about exit scenarios after every argument, I wouldn't waste headspace on them either. Standing in the kitchen, I held the hot bag of potatoes against my belly and breathed in their sweet fragrance. We had both come a long way since those first big arguments. I put the sweet potatoes on the counter. We would have them for dessert after Otosan went to bed. I knew I would talk with Akira about us again someday, but not tonight. I had saved a copy of the email to my computer, and we could examine it together when the time was right. That was good enough to get me through the rest of the week, and even through the rest of the year. Okay, that's all I have for today, and I'll be back again hopefully next week with the next section. And I hope if you've never had sweet potatoes roasted in the Japanese style that you'll get the chance to eat them someday. They are divine, the best dessert ever. Simple and whole, just as they are. Thanks for tuning in.